Hello and welcome. I am Chakshu Roy and you're watching Laws in the Making on Rajya Sabha TV. Today we bring to you the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Amendment Bill 2018. The bill makes changes to the Juvenile Justice Act, which was passed in Parliament in 2015. The bill seeks to empower district magistrates to pass orders for adoption of children to reduce the time taken for issuing such directions. To discuss the issue, we have with me Ms. Bharti Ali, co-founder and director, Haq Center for Child Rights, and Mr. Shankar Aggarwal, former secretary, the Ministry of Women and Child Development. A bill to enable the speeding up of adoption proceedings has been introduced in Parliament. It is called the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Amendment Bill 2018. The bill makes changes to the Juvenile Justice Act that was passed by Parliament in 2015. This act establishes the framework for adoption of orphaned and abandoned children.
Adoption is a legal process that allows individuals to become parents of a child even though they are not related by blood. It makes the adoption a permanent legal relationship between the parents and the child. The Juvenile Justice Act of 2015 specifies the eligibility conditions that prospective parents have to fulfill to be able to adopt a child. It also provides a step-by-step process by which prospective parents can adopt a child.
जैसा कि अधिनियम 2015 को चेंज करने, उसमें संशोधन करने के लिए कोर्ट में अपील करी गई है, तो इससे विधेयक आसान इसलिए बनेगा क्योंकि अभी तक के प्रोसेस में ये होता था कि कोर्ट्स के चक्कर लगाते लगाते जो पेरेंट्स हैं, जो फैमिली है, उन्हें बच्चा गोद लेना होता था तो उन्हें बहुत टाइम लगता था। उन्हें कोर्ट के चक्कर लगाने में और बच्चे को अपने घर तक लाने में बहुत ज़्यादा टाइम लगता था। लेकिन अब इससे क्या होगा कि जो कोर्ट एडॉप्शन बिल पास करने का प्रोसेस है, जो जिम्मेदारी है, वो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी जिला मजिस्ट्रेट को चली गई है। इससे कोर्ट के कार्यभार भी हल्के होंगे और जो बच्चा है उसे जल्दी ही एक परिवार मिल जाएगा ताकि उसे चाइल्ड केयर इंस्टीट्यूशन में ज़्यादा लंबे वक्त तक ना रहना पड़े। तो आसान ये होगा कि वक्त ज़ाया नहीं होगा और आसानी से एक परिवार को, एक व्यक्ति को, एक दंपति को बच्चा मिल जाएगा और एक बच्चे को परिवार मिल जाएगा।
To adopt a child, prospective parents have to meet certain criteria. Accordingly, couples and single parents can adopt a child. A single male parent is not allowed to adopt a girl child. Prospective parents are required to make an application and upload documents on an online portal. A specialized agency then determines their suitability and eligibility for adoption through a home study. They are then referred to profiles of children who are legally free for adoption. After the parents indicate their acceptance of a child, a petition is filed before court for granting an adoption order to complete the adoption process.
So there is no need again and again to look into manually whether the adoption is valid or not. It's repeating the process, delaying the child, because I think if a child is a day more after being adopted in an orphanage or in a SA without a parent, then it's injustice for him. If he has got a family, he should be given a family immediately with care and protection.
Under the Act, while granting the adoption order, the court is required to review certain documents, ensure that necessary procedures have been complied with, and conduct an inquiry of the child and adoptive parents. This is done to ensure that the adoption is being done for the welfare of the child and that due consideration is given to the wishes of the child. Further, the court has to dispose of the adoption proceedings within 2 months from filing the application for adoption.
So clearly this is an important piece of legislation which will impact not only orphan and abandoned children, but also prospective adoptive parents. Mr. Aggarwal, you've been involved with the ministry. Could you kind of lay down what is the process followed currently in the country with respect to adoption?
You see, I'll give you the broad picture for the process of adoption of a child in this country. As you must be knowing, in 2000 we had an act, but that act had specified very sketchy kind of a procedure for adoption of children. When the new government came in, and especially with the efforts of the Minister Mrs. Menka Gandhi, she was determined that we must make the process of adoption very smooth, hassle free, and people should find it a pleasant exercise to adopt a child. And thereafter we looked into each and every aspect, and thereafter in 2015 a new law was brought in, and this specifies the procedure in details to adopt a child. So first, anyone who is desirous of adopting a child has to register himself or herself with the district level agency. Once the person has been, the couple who is desirous of adopting a child has been registered, thereafter whenever he gets on the gets an opportunity and the child is available, thereafter they are shown few pictures and the details of the children, and meanwhile the district level agency looks into the credentials of the adopting parents, whether they are in a position to adopt the child, whether they would be in a position to take care of the child, and whether their intentions are above board. So, all these things are looked into, and this is basically known as some kind of a survey, and once it is conducted, thereafter the couple or the adopting single parent is given an opportunity to select a child. Once the child has been selected, thereafter, after all this process, matter goes to the court, and the court ultimately gives an order, because adoption has to have the legal basis, so that in future nobody can question this adoption process. And that process, that legal process, when it goes to the court, it used to take a lot of time, and that is why the new government thought that it will be good idea to give this responsibility to the court of the district magistrate rather than giving to the district court.
We'll come to that. We'll come to that. Bharti, very quickly. So we've made a shift from the 2000 Act, which, as Mr. Aggarwal pointed out, had some details about adoption, to a much more comprehensive regime in the 2015 Act. Are there any other differences between the 2000 and the 2015 Act when it comes to adoption processes?
Well, there are a lot of differences in the sense that, you know, we could see, for instance, pre-adoptive foster care as a very important component in the 2000 law, which continues in the 2015 Act but a little diluted. And the entire mechanism has changed. You know, in the year 2000, you could physically meet the children and take a call. Now you've got to rely completely on pictures which are available on the Caring's website, where you register as an adoptive, a prospective adoptive parent. So, you know, the procedures have changed drastically. Also, you know, so single parent adoption is now allowed, for instance, except for males wanting to adopt a female child. And over the years, there are some more changes that are in the pipeline, as we are given to understand that even you know, the LGBTQI couples may have an opportunity to adopt a child, but that's in the pipeline. So things have changed both in terms of procedures as well as understanding of adoption. Children with special needs have received a lot of attention for adoption purposes, because unfortunately we haven't been able to promote adoption of children with special needs, domestic adoption of children with special needs in the country. So some mechanisms have been created to ensure that if Indian parents are not adopting them, at least they have they find families out of the country. So those mechanisms have been built in. It's been ensured, doubly ensured, that siblings stay together, and as far as possible, you know, they should be given in adoption to the same family rather than you know, separating them. Those kind of things, you know, have come into the 2015 now.
And I think the recent regulations also have talked about that single women above the age of 40 will also get a little bit of a priority,
right,
when it comes to them adopting. Is that correct?
Right. So, but those are some of the see, some things have happened in law, and some other things have happened through the adoption regulation, which keep getting changed from time to time, catering to the needs and the situation on the ground. But what we still haven't been able to address is you know, ensuring that there are no loopholes and gaps in the process of declaring a child free for adoption, in the process of home studies that are carried out to look at the credentials of the adoptive
parents,
the prospective adoptive parents. There are lots of loopholes, and
we'll talk about that. Mr. Aggarwal, one interesting thing that I saw as a shift was possibly bringing of some kind of a time frame. You know, Bharti mentioned declaring children free from legal impediments for adoption. I think there's a time frame of 2 months for children below a certain age and a time period of 4 months.
Absolutely.
So what is the importance of having, you know, some kind of a time frame in adoption proceedings?
You see, basic objective of this law was to give a legal footing to the adoption process, number one. And number two, it has to be a very pleasant exercise. However, in the name of procedures and in the name of doing some kind of a due diligence, all these agencies involved in the adoption process are taking a lot of time. So, we thought it fit that we must have a time frame for each and every activity, and that is why this 2 months time had been prescribed for the court, district court, that they had to give their judgment finally within 2 months. But these are basically some kind of guidelines. Now, this is a part of the act today. However, the courts find it very difficult to adhere to these kinds of timelines. And not only the courts, even all the agencies, in district level agencies and various functionaries, they take their own time to take a final call on that particular issue.
Bharti, coming to you. So, Mr. Aggarwal mentioned agencies which are involved in the entire process, but clearly courts are not the only agencies which are involved in the process. Could you tell us as to the different agencies which are involved in adoption proceedings?
So, I will begin with the police itself, because when the police find an abandoned child, they are supposed to immediately produce the child before the Child Welfare Committee within 24 hours. So, the next agency then is the Child Welfare Committee, and the Child Welfare Committee then designates a welfare officer to carry out a home study, to carry out a more detailed investigation and inquiry, not really an investigation but an inquiry, and make a report on where has this child come from, how was the child found, what happened, can the child be given an adoption or be placed in foster care, is there any other mechanism to suitably rehabilitate this child. A lot depends on the age of the child as well. So, there are missing children of different ages that are produced before the child welfare committees. Besides the child welfare committees, if the child is below 6 years, definitely the child is kept temporarily in what is known as specialized adoption agency. They are registered childcare institutions under the JJ Act. So, the third agency in place are these specialized adoption agencies, who are supposed to then do the matching, once the child welfare committees complete their inquiry into the aspect of declaring the child legally free for adoption, they will pass necessary orders, and the SAR, the Specialized Adoption Agency, has to thereafter start finding suitable parents for this child. And this is about children who are under 6 years of age, where the Specialized Adoption Agencies come into play. But now our law also allows adoption for older children. So that's where other childcare institutions come into play. So that's yet another agency. All of them have to carry out necessary procedures to ensure that the child is being placed in with the right set of parents, and that adoption is actually in the best interest of the child, that it would be the most suitable form of rehabilitation. And once they complete these procedures, only then the application goes before the courts. In case of inter-country adoptions, CARA also has a role to play. CARA is the Central Adoption Resource Authority. Agency. And they have to give no objection and final clearance to inter-country adoptions, because it's a matter of child being gone to another country, and follow-ups are not the easiest things to do once the child has left your country.
So, clearly there are two parallel processes which are happening. One process is where orphan, abandoned and surrendered children are coming into the system, where they are going to be declared legally free. And the other part of the system is where prospective adoptive parents are applying to adopt these children. But Mr. Aggarwal, is this law the only way to adopt children in this country, or is there, I read somewhere that there is a Hindu maintenance and adoption of children?
You see, earlier in good old days time, lot of kids were being adopted informally.
Okay.
And then they used to have some kind of a deed, register or whether it was unregistered. But in due course of time, it used to give rise to a lot of litigation.
Okay.
Because suppose the person or the child who has been adopted is not the only child of the parent, then the biological sibling, they may stake claim in the property of the parent, and that kind of a thing. It's a little murky kind of a thing. So, we thought it fit that it must be codified, so that there is no scope for any litigation, and moreover, it should not create a rift and bad blood within the siblings.
Great. It's time for us to head into a break. When we come back, we will tell you about the amendments in the Juvenile Justice Bill of 2018.
Rajya Sabha TV's YouTube channel has just crossed a new exciting milestone. It now has over 1 million subscribers. That's more than 10 lakh people who like and want to watch RSTV. Over 15 crore people have watched our videos. Our online viewers are also engaging with us more actively on YouTube. More and more people like, share and comment on our videos. We thank you, our growing tribe of RSTV viewers. We will strive every day to bring you more exciting and engaging content. So stay tuned to Rajya Sabha TV.
Welcome back. We are discussing the amendments to the Juvenile Justice Act, which impacts adoption in the country.
In the 3 years till March 2018, about 11,000 children have been adopted. Till July, there were 629 cases relating to passing of adoption orders pending in various courts across the country. The Ministry of Women and Child Development has said that due to the delay in issuing adoption orders by courts, children continue to languish in childcare institutions even after getting a family. The heavy workload of courts in turn has resulted in this undue delay in issuing adoption orders.
जो ये प्रोसेस है जिला मजिस्ट्रेट को दे दिया है तो उससे क्या है कि आप एक मामले को पर्सनली सुलझा सकते हैं और उसको बहुत आसानी से पढ़ सकते हैं, समझ सकते हैं। तो इसलिए उस चीज़ पे बहुत जल्दी आप फोकस कर सकते हैं। तो हम उस कोर्ट कचहरी में जो समय लगता है जाने में आने में, कभी वो छुट्टी पे हैं, कभी क्लाइंट छुट्टी पे है, तो उन सब चीज़ों से बचा जा सकता है और सीधे सीधे आपका जिस भी अधिकारी से संपर्क है उससे संपर्क हो सकता है। वो संपर्क अधिकारी आपको सीधे सौंप सकता है और आपका काम, ये प्रक्रिया बहुत आसान हो जाएगी, तो समय नहीं लगेगा। और इस प्रक्रिया में सबसे ज़्यादा भला यही है कि इसमें समय कम लगे ताकि दोनों पक्ष आसानी से एक दूसरे को समझ सकें।
To address these lacuna, the Juvenile Justice, Care and Protection of Children Amendment Bill 2018 specifies a shift in the powers of issuing the adoption orders. Accordingly, it says that instead of courts, district magistrates will be empowered to issue adoption orders. The bill transfers all pending matters related to adoption before any court to the district magistrate, having jurisdiction over the area. The aim of the bill thus is to reduce the undue delay in issuing adoption orders and complete the adoption proceedings in a timely manner.
If the adoption process is made simpler, as you said, or perhaps if the district administration is not only empowered with new authority, but is also given kind of certain mechanism and apparatus which makes it easier, well, definitely the child will gain out of it. And as you know, this country has about maybe 3.5 million children, 35 million children are said to be children in need of care and protection. 20 million children are said to be orphans in this country. So obviously adoption can be the best way in which those children can be looked after, can be settled in life.
The Juvenile Justice, Care and Protection of Children Amendment Bill 2018 was introduced in the Lok Sabha by the Minister of Women and Child Development Maneka Gandhi on August 6, 2018. Let's now go over to our expert panel to discuss in detail the changes that the bill will bring about, their rationale and impact.
Bharti, so clearly an important piece of amendment legislation. I wanted to understand from your perspective. So what does this shift really mean for adoptive parents, and what does this shift really mean for children who are going to be up for adoption?
Yes, so for adoptive parents, definitely, they're looking at, the process being expedited, which is going to help them, and it's also going to help children who are otherwise, legally free for adoption and definitely need a family to be going to. But there are, as I had said in the beginning, several procedural loopholes that we need to look at and address. And I would like to begin on the note that I disagree with the fact of 35 million or 40 million children being in need of care and protection. A lot of these children have their biological families. It's just that the families need a little support to be able to look after their children well. And our Juvenile Justice Act has several alternative measures of rehabilitation. Adoption is one of them. But there are others like sponsorship, which we haven't even tried out in this country. And a sponsorship program would actually ensure that families are strengthened to look after their children and provide necessary care and protection, so that children don't fall out of that social security and protective net and don't get labeled as children in need of care and protection unnecessarily. So we would be able to take care of a lot of our children if we were to work on those schemes. Coming back to adoption now, so adoption, expediting adoption is indeed something that we all need to look up to. But my question is, do we have enough research that is informing us how long does it take for courts to give a child an adoption once they receive an application? I have not seen any research. Nobody is interested in carrying out this research, and we just keep saying that it takes time. And there is an image of courts that we have in our mind, and we just keep reiterating that image without really having evidence to that effect. The other question is that can the DM really be given conflicting authorities? And I'm saying that because the district magistrate is the head of the district child protection units, also created under the Integrated Child Protection Scheme and the Juvenile Justice Act. And being the head of that unit, the DM has to coordinate as well as monitor entire rehabilitation programs for children in conflict with law and children in need of care and protection in his district. And if the DM is also going to execute one of the rehabilitative measures, which is adoption, then there is definitely a conflict of interest that needs to be resolved at some point of time. And the third aspect that I wish to draw attention to is that Kiran Singh in the beginning of the program had very clearly said that there are problems in the process, and I'm reiterating. So how do we deal with those problems? Kanth Pandey's judgment came from the Supreme Court to establish guidelines that would deal with trafficking of children for adoption. We till date haven't been able to deal with that situation at all. Children who go missing and have biological families are later found somewhere in Australia, Canada, all going in for inter-country adoptions. And I personally know of at least 12 parents who know where their children are, but they can't get them back now.
Okay. So, Mr. Aggarwal, Bharti's brought some interesting points. One is there is no study which talks about how much delay is there in the court system. The JJ Act of 2015 gives courts, I think, a 2-month time to complete the process. What is your view on, when adoption orders have to be given from a judicial authority, how much time should it take? Is it taking longer? Is it taking lesser? Because you've dealt with these things in the ministry.
You see, I do not agree with ma'am that the data is not available with the government. Government has got the data. I do not have data right now, but I can say with full confidence that instead of taking only 2 months, the courts are taking much longer. And there is huge harassment when people go to the court and they find the courts are not functioning on that particular day, and there is a lot of problem. Second problem is that there is a lot of rigidity when we go to a normal court of law. On the other hand, when you go to the collector, there is a lot of informal channels of passing on the information, accepting information, conveying your views and things like that. And that's why this lady, which was shown on your screen, she was saying that it is easier to get across the collector or the district magistrate and get the work done, and the work can be expedited. Second point, which ma'am was saying about the conflict of interest, I do not foresee any conflict of interest in the working of the district magistrate as the coordinator and the monitor of the child protection unit at the district level, and as educator in the case of adoption. Because these two things are not that of a player and a referee. there will be a conflict of interest when the same person is a player and the referee as well. Here he is coordinator and he looks into the protection of these children, but not a player. He is a regulator, and here he is educating. So when there is a role of a regulator and the educator, then there is no conflict. So I personally feel that the proposed amendments will surely make the process simpler, smoother and faster.
Okay, Bharti, very quickly, one, I wanted you to respond to Mr. Aggarwal. The second thing that I wanted to ask you is, so now we have a detailed process and there are some bit of timelines that are given. Some of them can be adhered, some of them cannot be adhered, and there might be data which is available or not available. My question to you is, you mentioned the fact that there are certain children who have been adopted not through means under the JJ Act, right? So is it?
No, through means under the JJ Act.
But they've not been, the parents have, there was not enough efforts to find the parents before the children were given up for adoption.
Right.
My question to you is, are there illegal adoptions which are happening outside of the purview of the JJ Act also?
Definitely, because we still haven't brought nursing homes under the purview of law, hospitals and nursing homes. There is a lot of illegal adoption, there's no doubts about that. And some of it can also be corrected through law. For instance, if I find a child on the road and, we build a bonding, a relationship with this child, I cannot get that child unless I've registered myself with carings and gone through the entire process of finding a child for myself. And the child I finally find for myself may or may not necessarily be the child I found on the road and I developed a bonding with. So some of these things need to be corrected somewhere.
So, Bharti, I'm so sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. We're running out of time. Can I have a very quick, small closing 10-second comments from both of you? Mr. Kiran.
I think this particular piece of legislation, which is now before the Parliament, is a very good piece of legislation. It will surely expedite the process. And not only the process will be a pleasing exercise and pleasing experience for the adopting parents and the adopting person.
The NCRB statistics 2016 tell me that 440 children were kidnapped for adoption. It's a serious issue. Let's not look at children as mere commodities who have to be put up and for sale. If you're talking of best interest of the child, let's weigh the best interest the way it ought to be weighed.
Thank you, Bharti. Thank you, Mr. Aggarwal. This was a wonderful discussion. Clearly, there'll be enough for Lok Sabha to discuss, but it's time for us to end the show. You can watch our shows on the RSTV page on YouTube. We will be back with a new issue and a new episode. Keep watching Rajya Sabha TV.